Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jones. And, I know we're up against a time crunch here. It's 11, but bear with me as we talk a little bit. I listening to Dawn, I didn't realize my dad was so advanced in genetics when I was leaving for college, because I remember in 1986 when I loaded my car to head to Ames, Iowa to go to school. He stopped me at the driveway before I took off, and he shook my hand. He says, "I'll tell you two things." And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, I'll see you at Thanksgiving." And then the next thing he said was, when you get up there to school, don't be screwing around all the time. You don't have the genetic potential. So he was pretty advanced. I didn't even know it. I got to give him some credit. This beef industry is wonderful. And the thing that is wonderful about it to me is that we serve all socioeconomic strata in this country. We serve from when someone has a wedding, when someone has a success, it's biblical that we bring the fatted calf to celebrate the good times. You don't get a raise and say, "Gather up the family, we're going into town for a chicken breast." We're going into town for a steak, and we're going to enjoy success. The other side of this is we are the staple food for those that can't take care of themselves. And I think we forget this. We start talking about export. We start talking about selling steaks for big money and things to that nature. But our trim and our ground beef, the number 3 with SNAP expenditures, that's with food stamps. The number 3 purchase with food stamps in this country is ground beef. The number 6 purchase with cash in grocery stores is ground beef. So not only do we celebrate the best times, we're the staple food, we're the most affordable, most nutritious, the safest, most wholesome, but by gosh, it also is the best tasting. Amen. And so it is powerful to be able to be a part of this industry. And when you work in your operation every day, this is a picture by Kenneth Wyatt, who's one of my favorite artists out of Tulia, Texas. If you painted this painting and you walked in the hotel lobby and it was up behind the counter and you were the artist and you walked in there, you'd think that's pretty cool? I'd say, heck yeah. If you wrote a book and it was on somebody's coffee table at their house, would that be pretty awesome? Absolutely. Well, you as beef producers, when someone walks in there and they open up their fridge and there's a pound of hamburger thawing out, you should have that same feeling because they chose our product. They chose what we raise. They chose what we do together. And there are so many people involved, and that's kind of the topic of this. This isn't we can sell more beef like an economist. This is Bruce Feinberg in the middle there with the glasses, and this is out at Byron Ford's place, a feed yard that I consult out west of Grand Island. And Bruce is the quality assurance executive for McDonald's Corporation. We do a lot of work together. And we work on projects all around the globe on beef. There are 336 packing plants that feed into McDonald's system, okay? They serve 65 million people today. I help chair their animal well-being and health and well-being committee, but Bruce and I work a lot together, and went to the packing plant at Lexington, went over this feed yard, because I wanted to see him hold a bottle of fluoroquinolone. They write all these policies on antibiotics. I said, "Here, hold a bottle at least, please." Okay? So he's sitting there and we're driving down the road and he goes, "Thompson, you're just thick-headed." And I go, "Yeah?" He says, "You're not listening to me. Every time we come up with a policy or procedure at McDonald's, you get mad and you say, 'You don't know anything about farming,' and you start telling me what's wrong about it, and you make it sound like I'm trying to force you to do something." He goes, "What I'm trying to tell you is if you do some of these things, I can sell more beef at the counter in my restaurants." As soon as you start thinking that way, that if we make some of these changes, they have a better story. And whether we like it or not, the retailer, they say the greatest distance between two people is the last 3 feet. The retailer is the last 3 feet between us and our consumer. If we don't provide information, if we don't provide opportunity for our retailers to market our product, it's going to be a long, long go. We have to start thinking as one beef industry. We don't have enough resources to be segmented. We are segmented, but we have to be aligned in our thinking. Everything between the cow-calf man and the consumer is a margin business. And somebody will say, well, I don't care if we feed Thailand or not at the feed yard level. Well, we should, because if it costs $5 at the feed yard to not feed Thailand, either the cow-calf man's not going to get paid by the feed yard, or the consumer's going to have to pay more. Money is like energy. It's neither created nor destroyed, okay? And somewhere along that margin. So if something affects the feed yard, it's going to affect the economics on the ranch of origin or the stocker operation. And it's going to affect the consumer as we move forward. We have to have a better understanding. We have a lot of issues, and I'm going to bounce through this because, number one, sitting in here for 2 hours is a long time. Number two, nobody ever complained about getting done early, okay? So not going to get done early, but I'm going to bounce through some of these. I will tell you this, on the lack of consumer attachment and people not knowing where their food comes from, this is one of my favorite jokes. I got to at least get this out. And it's clean, you can take it home, and it's about people not understanding. If I ask a third grade student where that milk came from, what do they say? The store, right? Well, this little old lady walks into a butcher shop, and she goes up the meat counter, and she said, is that beef tongue? And the butcher said, yes, ma'am, it sure is. She said, did that come out of the mouth of a cow? He said, it always has. She says, oh dear, I could never eat anything that came out of the mouth of a cow. I'll just take a dozen eggs instead, you know? And so as you start to think about this, you know, the other thing is we live in a first world country. Living in a first world country, you have to understand this. When I work with Zamfara State, Nigeria, or Limpopo State, South Africa, they're not worried about how to fix the anterior cruciate ligament of a toy poodle, okay? It's how do I keep my goat alive? And how do I keep things going? And when you live in a first world country, they say a person whose belly is half full has many problems, and a person who's starving's got one. And in our industry, in our country, we're so blessed to have all these problems that we think are big, right? They really aren't. We're so blessed. And so we got to keep that in mind, that when the wackos start coming out of the weeds and attacking us, just think how blessed we are to be able to have issues that these people think are important. So, you know, food is so cheap in this country, and that's another reason why we don't care if we make laws and things about it. We spend 6% of our personal income on food at home. At K-State, we measured how much food is thrown away in the cafeteria there at school. They throw away a third of a pound of breakfast, or a quarter pound of breakfast, a third of a pound of lunch, and a half pound of dinner. A pound of prepared food a day is thrown away per student. 14,000 students in the dorms, valued at $5 a pound, $70,000 worth of food a day, just in the dorms at K-State, thrown away. We waste so much food. The other thing is we eat too much, all right? We have people 14% food insecurity and 35% obesity rate in this country. It is a really difficult balance as we think about all of this moving forward. Now, one thing people always say to me is, well, the reason why food's so cheap at home is because people eat out more. We don't. Since Moby Dick was a minnow, we spend 4% of our personal income on food outside the home. We eat the same since 1929. We have spent 4% of our personal income on food outside the home. So restaurants have a captive amount of money, right? So if a new niche pops up, then someone is going to lose profit or going to lose revenue out of the restaurant business. So you either have to destroy the niche or you have to embrace it and own it yourself as the bigger restaurants. Now, the reason why people in restaurants can make outlandish claims, you'll hear never ever antibiotic or, you know, fed lemongrass or all these different things. And I work with McDonald's, I work with Applebee's, IHOP, all the brand foods, all these different retailers on some sort of different capacity. I work with 3 of the 4 major packers, and I still consult feed yards on a daily basis. When we sit down, the reason why restaurants can make these claims and make these changes is because restaurants feed the rich. Restaurants feed the people. They don't take food stamps, and they feed people who can afford to have someone else plan the meal, cook the meal, and do the dishes, right? So they have a completely different market than what a grocer does. Grocers feed the masses. Grocers are essential. What happened when we had COVID? What went empty? The stores, right? Where did we quit going? The restaurants. They weren't essential. That just solves it right there. So when you hear these claims, that's the reason why they can do it. So I'm going to get to some of these other things. When we talk about sustainability, they asked me to come to Washington, D.C. and talk about sustainability in the beef industry. And it was just like, I'm not a sustainability expert. And they said, well, just give us your 2 cents on it. And I said, all right. By the time I got down to it, sustainability, the thing that people want to sustain the very most in life is themselves. All right? How do I keep what I got? And so when we start to think about this, you got to, I have 4 daughters. I don't know how many times we've watched the movie Miss Congeniality in our house. But the thing that always comes down to all the beauty pageants, when they ask them a question, all the contestants, what's the answer to all the questions? World peace, right? Well, in sustainability, everybody argues until you hit the nuclear option, which is we have to save the planet. Huh? For me, a guy from Southwest Iowa that graduated in a high school class of 8, saving the planet is a slightly bigger issue than what I can solve or even start to comprehend. So you have to cookbook it down to me. What is it that you actually want to sustain? Do you want to sustain our country? Do you want to sustain our farm, our ranch? And I have to stop right now because I told myself I was going to say this to y'all. Y'all have been in our prayers across this country. We went through the wildfire in southwest Kansas, and what y'all went through last month and what you're continue to do, just know if you need help, we're there to help you. All of us. And we have thought about cows, we've thought about fence posts, we've thought about hay, we've thought about everything that you and your neighbors need. But most importantly, if you need somebody, we're going to throw an arm around you and let you know that we're all in this together, we're there, okay? Sustainability is, I will promise you this. Climate change will have more impact on agriculture than agriculture will ever have on climate change, okay? That's the way we got to sum it up. Cows are a recycler, an upcycler of carbon. The carbon goes from carbon dioxide into that plant, into that cow. It comes out as methane. Hallelujah. You know why? Because the half-life of carbon dioxide, the carbon in carbon dioxide is 1,000 years, and the half-life of the carbon that comes out of a belch of a cow as methane is 5 years. The cows are good for the environment. We got to move that forward. And the last thing about sustainability, if we don't band together and work together as an industry to meet the consumer's demands and help each other make money, without profitability, there is no sustainability. This is not a hobby for us. We have to make money. Animal health and welfare. Animal rights activists use animal abuse cases to drive animal welfare policy. Animal rights is the belief that animals have the same rights as humans. Animal abuse is criminal. And animal welfare is what we do every day. Provide shelter, vaccination, nutrition, low-stress cattle handling, all those different things. Animal welfare, and I'll wrap up animal welfare kind of with this. Well, I do have one thing on audits that's fun. But at McDonald's, we did a survey globally and asked consumers, what does animal welfare mean to you? And the survey came back, and the 2 things we got out of the survey was, number 1, a safe food product comes from a healthy animal, and a healthy animal is one that had good animal welfare. And so health became center to animal well-being for our industry as the retailers. Now, Stephen Covey wrote the book about the speed of trust, and as trust is eroded, as these animal rights groups erode the trust between us and the restaurants, which is one of their goals, as trust erodes, the price of business goes up, and the speed of business slows down. And when we start to think about audits and assessments and different things that are coming to our industry, that is a way to try to slow down the speed of progress, or the speed of business, and increase the cost, right? So one of these big restaurant chains I was working with, I decided, you know what? Because I heard them there say, we're going to audit back to the farm. And I'm like, you ever farmed? You ever been out there? You know, I'd throw you the keys to the loader. I think you'd wind up where Don did, and you wouldn't even be trying. And at least he was doing something good. At the end of the day, I said, you know what, I travel a lot, I'm gonna assess their restaurants. I'm gonna do an audit on their restaurants. So I took my cell phone, and I'd go in there. If the bathroom floor was a mess, I'd take a picture. If I went out front and the trash was overflowing and they hadn't got it taken care of and it wasn't appropriate, didn't look good, I'd take a picture. This kid was serving me my lunch. He looked like he'd been in some sort of car wreck with a tackle box on his lap. He had piercings all over him. And I said, hey, can I take your picture? He said, sure. He held up my bag, took his picture. And, I went back and I said, you know what? I don't think you are representing my beef industry very well. And when you start thinking about that restaurant as being ours, that we own it, your mindset changes. Think about that. Think if you owned the cow-calf, if you owned it all the way to the consumer. We do. We have to own it. And we have to get along, and we have not enough resources to keep doing this. We do animal welfare every dang day. We have so many things through BQA, what we do with your veterinarian, what we do with nutritionists, what we do as producers, just like what Don's doing with his barn and different things to that nature. And I wish we'd have had a barn everywhere north of I-80 last week. We had minus 29 wind chill. When I went out to, you will know if there's a little speck right here that's not covered immediately to get that thing covered up. But we were busting water tanks. Antibiotics. 92% of the antibiotics used in the beef industry are tylosin and tetracycline in the feed. At the feed yard. 92% of the antibiotics. If we didn't feed tylosin or tetracycline, we would decrease antibiotic use in the beef industry by 92%. Isn't that amazing to think, those two things? It's for control of bovine respiratory disease, for metaphylaxis, mass treatment on arrival, is only 2.5% of the use of antibiotics. 3 or 4% to treat animals. It's just something that we do a great job of not having residues. Less than 0.5%, less than 0.3% of the animals presented, when they take the animal and they actually take the kidneys and liver and they actually drill down to the parts per trillion, have any antibiotic residue there. I'm not going to belabor the antibiotics, but I will say this. One of the things about antibiotics is we have a great story and we don't tell it enough. We have done so much through BQA. We have done so much with extra label drug use. We have a system where if you put an antibiotic in an animal, you can dial up US Fairhead. They'll tell you when that animal will be cleared to ship if you make a mistake. It's okay. We all make mistakes, right? Just own it. We don't use Genocin anymore, at least you shouldn't be. We have a veterinary feed directive, and in 2023, there will be no more over-the-counter antibiotics. We have a great story to tell our consumer, and we aren't telling it, of all the progress we've made over the last 30 years. Okay, this is a fun one. So we've heard about alternative protein, right? This is another reason why we got to bind together. There are people out there that want us to go to soy patties and different things to that nature. And I wrote a letter to Ellen DeGeneres. I did not get a return answer. But some of the comments they made, and they had a lady at a meeting, she held up a soy patty, and she goes, this is better for the environment, and it's more humane. And I said, do you really think cows are bad for the environment? And she goes, oh, they're terrible. And I said, well, then I'd think you'd want us to eat them all. I mean, what are you going to do if we don't eat them? Run around and shoot them all so they don't burp? I mean, this is really confusing to a lot of people. And so then on the humane side, I said, you know what? I'm not going to apologize for taking care of our cows. I'm not going to apologize for going out there when it's 30 below and busting ice. I'm not going to apologize for providing windbreaks. I'm not going to apologize for vaccinating them. Do you think it's more humane to go out and treat them for foot rot, or to let them limp around until a mountain lion finds them, or a group of coyotes or something like that? We have such a great system. We just got to get more people involved. And I told you about the upcycling and different things to that nature. One of the things that is a problem with alternative proteins is placement in the grocery store. You cannot do anything to confuse a consumer. And when they put alternative proteins next to real meat, that's a big problem. Okay, so we did a study at K-State where we took plant-based ground beef alternatives and compared it to 90-10, 80-20, and 70-30. And we had consumers. We took the 3 most common alternative proteins and we compared them. This is the train panel for beef flavor. Okay, the 3 bars on the left are the 90-10, 80-20, and 70-30 hamburger. Those are the Morningstar Impossible Burger, and I can't remember the 3 most common. You could tell they didn't like them, right? Did not taste like beef. They don't. This is the train for non-beef odor. Okay, I don't know if you know what a non-beef odor is, but it's not beef. Okay, just think of something that smells really horrible, that it's beanie, okay? It's a beanie smell, but they had the fake meat, the fake patties had a terrible smell too. And then when you ask the consumers that came in for overall liking, they didn't like them compared to hamburger. There's a big difference. So at the end of the day, we got to do our research. Cattle are better for the environment. Raising cattle is more humane than owning them, or ignoring them. And the last part of it is the alternatives don't taste so good, okay? So when you look at natural, organic, or natural, organic versus conventionally raised beef, USDA, the dietitians, and the Clinical Journal of Nutrition all say organic and natural is not different than conventional for safety, wholesomeness. The only difference is how they're produced, okay? Now, if you're into natural and organic beef, if you produce it, I'm for you. If you're in the beef industry, I'm for you. If you want to eat cardboard your entire life, I'm for you, okay? It's your life. What I have a problem with is when someone tells me that the conventional beef that I put on the table for my wife and kids is not as safe, not as nutritious, or not as wholesome, and I should do it differently. That's when I got a problem, okay? Stay in your lane. Steroid implants. You've heard that people say, well, we shouldn't use steroid implants because of the hormones in the beef. Well, if you look at an 8-ounce steak from an implanted steer versus an 8-ounce steak from a non-implanted steer, there's a difference of 1 nanogram of estrogenic activity in that 8 ounces, okay? Compared to if you eat 8 ounces of tofu, which you get 51 million nanograms of estrogenic activity. In men, if you overtrain on soy protein, you'll have some physiological changes that you did not expect. It's proven. You can Google it. It's don't overtrain on the silk. All right? Now, I told you I have 4 daughters. I don't know a lot about a lot of things in life, but one thing I've got figured out in my house of having 4 daughters and 1 wife is estrogen, okay? A pregnant woman produces 19 million nanograms of estrogen a day. A non-pregnant female, 500,000. We cannot throw away a technology like steroid implants that if we got rid of them, we would need a cornfield the size of the state of New York to replace that lost efficiency over a nanogram of estrogenic activity. A nanogram per kilogram is equivalent to a blade of grass on a football field. So, at the end of the day, our big ticket issues is, is that we have a really, really good product. I want to jump to this, and then I'll be done. During this talk, there were 60 babies born in the U.S. There were 244 babies born in China and 351 babies born in India. We cannot go backwards on technology. We cannot go backwards on production efficiency. We have to continue to move. Norman Borlaug, the father of the Green Revolution, said, we will have to produce as much food to feed our growing global population over the next 40 years as we have the last 10,000. It is a daunting task. We can do it, okay? One thing that people don't realize, I don't think, is that how little money most people live on in this country. We think everybody's rich. We ought to be rich. And that's just not the way it is. The median income in a household of 4 with 2 people working is $50,000. Okay? That means $25,000 apiece. If you and your spouse make over $100,000, you're in the top 20% of wage earners in the U.S. If you and your spouse make over $150,000, you're in the top 8%. You have a huge bounty. As we start to think about this, the one thing that we use to determine poverty in the United States, the one variable besides the number of people, is the price of food. As we see this inflation, as we see increases in food prices, and we don't have increases in wages, what's going to happen to the number of people in poverty? It's driving poverty up. It's not helping with poverty. 25% of Americans, $25,000 for a household of 4, 2 people working is the number for poverty right now, 26,000. 25% of Americans live in poverty. It's amazing, okay? When we look at food insecurity, the highest risk class of food insecurity in our country are single women with children. We got to take care of our neighbors. We got to start moving this needle forward. But the one thing that, and the reason why I mention this is because if we run out and do a lot of things that increase the price of beef or increase the price of pork or increases the price of chicken, which I don't think you can do, we've tried. The one thing we have to remember is what brought us to the dance. What puts beef on the center of the table? And it's not about hormone-free, antibiotic-free. Matter of fact, if you add up hormone, animal welfare, traceability, and environmental impact, that equals 18% in importance share, which does not equal safety or freshness. The 3 things that we can have non-negotiables in the beef industry: keeping our people safe, keeping our food safe, and animal welfare. Those are the 3 non-negotiable things as we move forward. We have to keep putting the best. And I keep telling people that beef is a health food. What we provide, man cannot live without. We have to keep the pillars safe, wholesome, and fresh, nutritious and affordable, look for new products, and we can sell more beef, but it will take us learning together, communicating, and implementing change. Now, this is what I wrap up with, because I hear our poultry friends talk about the increase in the consumption of poultry and the decrease in the consumption of red meat, okay, over the last 25 years, okay? So if they want to go that way, and I've been watching a lot of science on some of these cable news shows, how to redo science myself now. So I've got some new methods. So taking some lessons from what I watch on TV, I'm going to apply that if you look at the increase in chicken makes you fat, okay? If you look at the obesity graphs that have gone, remember in the 80s as Dave described and Dawn, that what we did was we got hammered for heart attacks and different things, right, with beef and the health of beef. Well, people started eating chicken because they thought it was healthier. Has obesity rates gone down or gone up? They've skyrocketed. We have gone from 13% obesity rates in the last 25 years to 35%. And I'm blaming it all on chicken. You ought to. So you heard it from me, and you heard it here. We're going to start going back to our anti-chicken. But anyway, so until we meet again, thank you for bearing with me and letting me run over a little bit. Be mindful of our communication. It's one for all and all for one in this industry. Everybody does it different. We're all competing against each other. We can do that when we're in these rooms, but when we walk outside of here to the public, we got to have locked arms and we got to be one beef industry. All of it in for the good of each other. We don't have the resources to squander and fight each other. We don't have the time. And you know what? The number one thing those animal rights and environmental and all those different people want us doing? Fighting. They want us fighting. It is pure joy and pandemonium to them. Let's not let them have it. Let's keep it going down the road. We got to express and expose the good. And the last thing is we got the best product and we got the best people. Nobody can relate to a consumer like someone in the beef industry. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great morning. Thanks.